Yeah, good morning all. I request Ashok San to start the meeting.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on urban forestry. I think I first of all welcome Mr. Subindo for this event and also our people on the webinar like the Toyota team members, management, family members, and friends for this urban forestry. I think this is, as you know, the current urbanization has depleted lot of forest and other areas, and greenery, as you can see, has come down. So this urban forestry is the current need of the year, and so this we are promoting as a Toyota now. And as you know, Toyota, we have been celebrating this June month as awareness month, and to rekindle our members' brain towards the environment, which is not the very important when they start working, but as a reminder, we keep on month doing this month as a reminder month. And this program is not only for our members, we also do it for our stakeholders, suppliers, dealers, and also one of the important stakeholders, the school children, wherein we continue to do the awareness program through our ecozone visit and also the planting of saplings and other activities we continue to promote in this environment fund. And this month also we have been conducting many webinars on different topics to enhance the environment awareness across the stakeholders. And as you know, in Toyota for the last year, 13 years, we have been continuously enhancing the Green Belt Development Program through our first the Eco Zone and our Eco Forest, which we did along with our Japanese Miyawaki-san. With that start point, we have almost planted around 3.5 lakh planting plants across our Toyota plant, and it looks we are working in nature. That is how the plant looks when you come inside our plant. So the same thinking we are now passing on to our members and their families to do it across the places where they are staying. And through this Environment Month, we also provide saplings so that they can promote this greenery across the uh, places where they are staying. And with this activity, this today for the urban forestry, we have the privilege of having Mr. Subindu Sharma, who was earlier our TKM engineer. And we are very proud to say that he has done a lot of activities on this urban forestry. And just a brief about him, I would like to tell. He is one of the eco-entrepreneur, the youngest, if you want to know. And if you see, he is an experienced industrial engineer at Toyota Kirloskar and turned to be eco-entrepreneur. And he is the founder and director of the Forest, a company which creates urban forests. And he creates afforestation methods that make it easy to plant maintenance-free and biodiverse forests using afforestation technology, which he learned from Miyawaki-san. And this technology he has specialized for the Indian condition, wherein the earlier very high cost was there. Now he has brought it down and affordable to everybody. So this is his main activity in this. Sorry, in this relation. He had discussed very length with Miyake-san and brought down the cost and made it as a Indian people also can do this activity in a small areas. And his company Forest promotes a standardized method for seeding dense, fast-growing native forests in barren lands, using his car manufacturing equipment to create a system. Following a multi-layer forest of 300 trees can be grown in a small area where 6 cars can be parked. In such a small area, we can go up to 300 trees, and in the price less than an iPhone. So this is how his contribution towards this afforestation is going on. And a forest has helped grow forests at home, schools, and factories. And he has contributed to many factories also bringing up this forest across their land. And you can see that overall there is an improvement in air quality and increase in biodiversity. And Mr. Supindu is recognized for his various activities through awards like INK Fellowship, Ashoka Fellowship, Nama Bengaluru Award, etc. And also he has given a TED talk on international platform. So with this background, I would like to request Mr. Subindu to continue this program. Welcome, Mr. Subindra.
Thank you so much, Ashok-san. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'll share my screen. I have a presentation to share.
Yeah, Wilson, did you please share the
Yeah, it's taking some time. Just
Okay.
okay, please let me know whenever you see my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, so today I'm asked to share about my work on urban forest. I would have loved to start with my Toyota story, but I'll start with the urban forest story, and then we'll talk about my journey of making these forests in different urban spaces, and also uh, how it all got started. So if we look at the spaces, the places where most of the humans live, usually we will end up pinpointing at cities. So cities are the places where most of the world population is found in higher concentrations. And you will also be able to realize that the essentials for human life, clean air, fresh water, healthy, nutritious food, comes from forests without any effort naturally. So agriculture wise, we have to grow our food, but as a species, we evolved in a forest or close to a forest, whether whether we would be hunter gatherers or we would be practicing some sort of farming, we always live close to a forest because clean air, fresh water, and the food, which these three things which were essential for human life, was always available in abundance in our forests. And that's the reason why most of the human civilization got started next to a river, close to a river, and places which would have had a forest long time ago. And these places, this small human settlement that you see in this picture, would have expanded into a village, from village to a small town, and from town to maybe a large city, whether it's a city like Mumbai or New York. This would have been the original start of these places. And today we find ourselves surrounded by these cities with absolutely no nature around us. This could be a common scene in city like Bangalore, city like Delhi or Mumbai, or maybe Istanbul, or any very much developed city like Tokyo as well. So how we reached from the point where we were totally surrounded by forest, trees, and nature to this point where we find ourselves surrounded by this kind of urban landscape that absolutely has no habitat, which used to be our natural habitat some time ago. I make this comparison between these two artworks. One is a 300-year-old painting from it's some 300-year-old miniature painting from some Rajasthani painter. And if you look at the detail of this painting, you will see that most of the species shown are different from each other. It's not the same tree species that the person has shown. And there are different types of birds and animals sitting on different types of trees. And in this painting, you have a king, you have a musician, and you have a saint. And all three of them are having a meeting in the forest, but nobody is feeling afraid, or there is no expression of distress in this type of environment. Whereas if you take a person from the city today and send them to a forest, probably they'll feel a little afraid. So how this has happened that what used to be our surrounding has totally changed. And in this process, in this long cycle of changing our environment, most of the city dwellers, most of the urban people are comparatively more unhealthy. They're comparatively more depressed and have this has taken this has affected the mental and physical well-being of the people living in cities. So when you don't have the natural habitat in which we have evolved as a species, we suffer, the humanity suffer because of that. So the best solution is when we think about forests, people try to think about places far away from the city. We think about some place which is in a national park or a wildlife sanctuary. But what we need right now is making forests where most of the people are, because that's where they are most required. So our focus in these last 10 years of planting forest has been to bring the forest back in the city, at that land where there would have been a forest long time ago, maybe 1,000 years ago, a forest that would have existed at that particular place before human intervention. So the picture that you see on your screen is central Delhi. This is close to ITO, and the flyover that you see in this picture is called Barapula flyover. Now Barapula is a drain. It used to be a tributary of Yamuna river, but it is so dirty now that you can call it a drain. And this forest is planted on the floodplain of that Barapula river, Barapula drain. We have selected the species which would have been growing at this landscape, the riverine species which grows, the species that grow at the river floodplains. So somehow we were able to find some patches of forest which were growing in that region, learn from there the species that are native to the place, potential natural vegetation, and planted it. And this forest has thrived and doing really well. Another example is a forest like this. I hope most of us can recognize where this is. This is Namma Bengaluru. This is the Bangalore airport, and we got an opportunity to plant a forest at the Bangalore airport as well 4 years ago. Now it has grown into a large forest, and these are the kind of places which needs the forest probably more than any other place, because these are the places where there is a lot of pollution because airplanes are taking off and landing all the time, and most of the people are there, and also because the regions of airports are otherwise cleared of bird population where all this biodiversity should go. So for this biodiversity we have to create edge habitats like these, so that in our urban setups we are not totally deprived of biodiversity. This is a forest in a place called Zandam in Netherlands, and this is a 200 square meters patch of forest. When we started a forest, we started working with a very basic philosophy of making forest in small spaces. I don't know whether we were right or wrong in thinking that we are a small company, so we will get only small projects. But that was the kind of pitch that we would have to a prospective client. We would say, okay, we can make forest in really small places. So just give us a little bit of land and let us show you what is possible to do. So this concept became really famous in Europe, in Netherlands. The credit goes to them because they spent a lot of money on promoting the idea. They presented it in many different ways, produced a lot of media around it. But now this concept has really taken over. And just 3 days ago, in National Geographic, there was this article about one of our project in Netherlands, why tiny forests are popping up in big cities. So what we can see that this mindset shift has started to happen. tiny forests are not a place that now city dwellers, especially Europeans, would imagine someplace far away where wild animals live together. They can imagine seeing a forest right in the middle of an urban landscape, right in a parking lot or in a corporate premises. How this has happened, the we can always trace it back to Dr. Akira Miyawaki's work, which started in Japan, but probably take a very long time to become widespread in the English speaking world. It could be one of the reasons that because he is a Japanese speaking person, the word didn't spread as much as now it's becoming popular. But number of people are making these forests all by themselves using the Miyawaki method. One another thing that we have observed is about these forests in urban setup and why they were not happening so far is the perspective. What we observed was that most of the landscaping that we see around us is considered to be beautiful. So you have Taj Mahal in the background. People say it's one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, or maybe even most beautiful building in the world. What you have in front of it is a manicured garden which complements the building. It looks like this building and this garden goes well together, because this is how I as a child has always seen Taj Mahal in pictures, and also when we saw it in person, it looked obvious that this is the kind of garden which goes well with Taj Mahal. But if you look at the oldest pictures of Taj Mahal, the garden did not look like this. The garden was not a manicured lawn. The garden was as dense and natural as a forest that we are planting today. So it might be the case that 150, 200 years later, we are bringing back those natural landscapes that used to be found everywhere in our urban landscape. So when a building like Taj Mahal was being made, the idea in the mind of architect was not a manicured garden like we see today. It was a dense natural forest, the kind of forest that we are making using the Miyawaki method. And what we are doing is also changing the perspective. We have to make people realize that the manicured gardens and lawns is not the natural solution of nature. If nature would have been provided a chance, nature would always grow natural forests on barren patches of land. What you see on your screen is a clear-cut deforestation of some natural forest in some part of the world. I don't know where, but probably Amazon. What you see is that the forest has been removed, the land is now exposed, the soil is exposed, and probably this exposed land is going to be used for agriculture. One or two species of crops would be grown for continuous harvest of some cash crop. However, even if barren land like this is deprived of human intervention for a very long time, maybe 200 to 300 years, naturally a forest will come back on it. First, the grasses would grow, maybe in some 5 to 6 years. You would have seen it in, if somebody leaves their plot and don't construct anything on it, slowly grasses and shrubs start to take over. So first the grasses will grow, then shrubs, then pioneer species of trees, which are softwood, fast growing trees, and then eventually the climax forest species. Climax forest species are shade tolerant trees. They can grow under the shade of other trees, and they are slow growers usually, but their wood is very hard. And this climax forest, once it is established, it is going to continue to regenerate itself probably up to the next ice age. And what Dr. Miyawaki has devised is a methodology to convert a barren patch of land into a climax forest. Now, most of us, because of our background at Toyota, we would at TKM, we would already know about this. But let me just give you a little bit of understanding of how we look at it and how we explain it to the world outside. So the Miyawaki method is basically go to a climax forest, conduct a survey, identify the potential natural vegetation, the vegetation that would grow on a patch of land all by itself. So identify this vegetation, segregate the climax forest species from it, find the mother trees of climax forest species, collect the seeds of these species, grow seedlings in a nursery, and plant these seedlings in a healthy prepared soil which is as healthy and fertile as soil of a natural forest. So what would take nature, the natural succession might take 200 plus years to reach the stage of growing climax forest naturally. In Miyawaki method, we are going to skip a few stages and directly plant the climax forest on day one. And some of the steps that we are going to follow is add topsoil, plant young seedlings of main tree species, and do a mix dense plantation. So what we are going to see as a result is a quasi-natural forest. It will still be a man-made forest, but because it's planted using the human intervention, we can call it a quasi-natural forest. However, the biggest stamp of approval of its success is that the fauna, the birds, the animals start to come and make this forest their own habitat. So we can consider it as good as a natural forest because these species of animals and birds otherwise would not have come to this forest. So what we do is we find the native trees growing in that region. The first picture that you see is a picture from Rajasthan. Even in a place like Rajasthan, you will find a lot of native trees, though it's a deserted state, but in some small pockets, you will see some pristine natural forest conserved. And these are the kind of patches we go to find out what is the natural vegetation of that particular place. Collect the seeds from these species of native trees and grow seedlings in a nursery. Prepare the soil by mixing 2-3 different types of biomasses and to improve soil's water retention capacity, perforation capacity, nutrition content. Also, a lot of aeration happens, the soil becomes soft. And Dr. Miyawaki, when he planted his first forest at TKM, the methodology that I learned as a volunteer was that fertile soil, topsoil, was brought from some other place and we created a mound. And the methodology is great. The mound methodology resulted in some of the most successful projects. However, the fertile soil that we were bringing from somewhere else created two problems. Not in TKM, but when I was trying to practice this methodology outside TKM, was that when we bring fertile soil from somewhere else, the ecosystem at that particular place, wherever we are sourcing the soil from, was spoiled. And also the cost of the project was very high because when we are moving soil, the transportation cost was very high. Also, the emissions were very high. So though we are doing ecological work, but somehow it did not make economical and ecological sense in a large way. We tried to find some solution to it, and I and one colleague of mine, we studied a course under an American scientist. Her name is Dr. Elaine Ingham, and she explained that the soil becomes fertile because of the microbes in it. And the reason why we would bring fertile soil from somewhere else, the topsoil in Miyawaki method, is because we want those microbes, the fungi, in that soil. So the solution which Dr. Elaine Ingham proposed was that we make a compost tea which has the same microbes that would exist in a healthy fertile soil, and introduce these microbes in our barren land so that the barren soil becomes as healthy and fertile as the topsoil of some other place. This made a lot of sense to us. We started finding alternatives to this compost tea because the methodology that we learned was an American methodology and it required some machinery which was not available in India. And luckily here in India, we found Mr. Subhash Palekar. He has developed methodologies for something called zero budget natural farming. And he was using something called Jeevamrit to support the microbial growth in the soil where they would be doing natural farming. We used the Jeevamrit, applied it to Miyawaki method, and that enhanced the methodology in a way that we could grow forest in the existing soil without adding topsoil to it. However, the results were the same. The results were not affected. So this challenge came to us when we were doing our first project in Rajasthan because the soil there was absolutely dead. And by use of Jeevamrit, we quickly realized that is the microbes which is making this forest thrive. And since then we have made this standard in all our projects. Also, when in Miyawaki method we use the mulching, these microbes that we have added to the soil, they are protected. They won't get sterilized. It's called UV sterilized, which kills these microbes. So the mulching, which is done by default in Miyawaki method, also helped the microbial count increase in the soil wherever we would plant this forest. This mulching also helped us to prevent the frost. I did not know that this could be a great use of this mulching when we learned it in Bangalore because Bangalore never gets so hot, gets so cold. In Netherlands, we observed that the frost formation was happening only on the mulch. So the mulching acted as a thick blanket, keeping the microbes moving while it was freezing outside. And we got some opportunity to plant forests at places where we could stand at the lower levels of soil in a dried river and could see the networks of roots growing. So this is a 1-year-old forest. So definitely Miyawaki method is one of or probably the best methodology of making these forests in the world. And what we also see is that the forest which is visible above the ground is equally complex under the ground as well. Within a year, the roots would tightly hold the soil, they will form a mesh. And now the latest research says that trees are able to communicate with each other using these network of roots. There is a fungus which grows throughout these network of roots and help trees to communicate with each other. And as we know, on the surface, the leaves fall, they decay, become humus, and this is what keeps the forest fed with good quality nutrition and makes the forest thrive. And we would say that this is the stage, as Dr. Miyawaki says, and I learned this line at Toyota, that no management is the best management. So this is the stage when we stop maintaining our forest. So basically, it's the same methodology that we learned back in 2009, and with 1 or 2 steps here and there, added a few layers of Jeevamrit to it. And this standard methodology in 2015, we made it open source. So because I had my background at Toyota, I learned I developed the ability and the hobby of standardizing everything to make SOPs of every small step that we were practicing in making of these forests. And some of these steps I would have written while I was working at Toyota itself. I'll tell the story in next few slides. But using this methodology now, number of people are making their own forests independent of us. So what started as a company eventually became a larger movement where people used that methodology and planted their own forest. And the next step for us would be, or the next Kaizen I would say for us would be to design these forests in a way that we can make people enjoy these forests or interact with these forests in an even better way. For first 6 years, most of our forests were just blocks of forest, maybe a 5 meter by 20 meter, 100 square meter mound. However, we found that it is very challenging for people to interact with this forest because they are so dense you can't even walk into it, and we don't recommend people walking into these forests. So how do we create this interaction between people and the forest? And we started designing our forest with walkways, with meditation areas, with benches, and eventually they started to we started selling them as something we called forestscaping, and this is one of such example. So instead of landscaping, we would do forestscaping, and we created this forest of well-being for the well-being of the residents of a gated community. So they have around 300 houses, and they have this half an acre forest where most of the people come for their meditation. And as a concept, this is going to create a great shift from the parks to like walk in a park to walk in a forest. And the theme that the designer had was people should be able to lose themselves to find themselves in a forest like this without leaving their gated community, without leaving their city. So to enjoy a forest, you don't have to go far away, and you can do it right where you are living. So this was the story, how we made these forests and what we are up to right now. A little bit of my background. I started my career at Toyota. I joined Toyota as a management trainee in June 2008. In December 2009, I happened to attend a lecture by Dr. Akira Miyawaki. So me going to Toyota was quite a dream come true. It was a dream job. When I was studying engineering at BVB Hubli, in our 5th semester, we were brought to TKM for an industrial visit. And that was the time when I visited TKM for the first time. And that was also the time when I dreamt that eventually someday I wish if I could work for this company. So 2007, I passed out of college. It took me 1 year to finally get a job at Toyota. And within 6 months of joining TKM, I happened to meet Dr. Miyawaki, and he presented some of his work, which was so moving that I was probably already thinking of somehow learning this method to plant these forests by myself. However, the idea was not very strong at that time when I saw that lecture. But June 2009, we planted this forest at TKM. So though this picture is once the forest was 2 year old, but June 2009, we planted this forest, and I was in charge of mound number 7, 100 square meters area. And that exposed me to some of the steps involved in the methodology. And soon after that, I started reading more about the Miyawaki method and how to plant a forest using the steps that I was exposed to a little bit at Toyota. And then I took help of my colleagues from PAD, from environment team, Srini-san, Ajay-san, and using those steps that I had learned with the help of environment team, I went to my hometown. This was in November 2010, and planted this forest as an experiment, and made a number of mistakes in planting this forest. But still, after 3 years, it looked something like this. Probably the biggest mistake was the biggest tree in this forest. This is a gulmohar tree, a non-native tree, which I should not have planted. And we planted it only to realize that this tree has dominated at least 20 trees, 20 seedlings surrounding it. So I also practiced the method as an experiment, made a mistake, learned from the mistake. However, I did not wait for all these forests to grow to their fullest. In January 2011, I started a forest as a company. So this was the launch of the company. I went to a small conference. By this time, I was already out of TKM. January 2011, we started the company, and I went to a conference. And this is the same presentation style that I learned at TKM. We made those fiberglass boxes, and this is also one of the, I think, Toyota's way of doing things to expose people to the methodology. So though we were selling the results in form of pictures, we would show that this is how it is going to look like in long run. But the idea of keeping the methodology, keeping the process open was there right in the beginning. And I only realized it that it's quite a big deal once I saw how other corporates are working. But at TKM, it was very obvious for us to share the know-how so that everybody learns what's going on in the soil. So here also you can see we have the soil samples, soil and the material samples, and then the mixed condition soil and materials. This is exactly how Srini-san would have presented it at TKM. So same thing we tried replicating. We would also carry the seedlings with us to show people that these are the native tree species. This is what we should be planting. So this is how the company was launched. Later on, I got an opportunity to plant a small forest at our Toyota Regional Parts Center in Pune. So Pune has this regional parts center, and there was almost an acre of area surrounding the periphery of this RPC, which was assigned for afforestation. But that time, I think, because the Bangalore team was busy and Srini-san was aware about that, I am trying to establish myself as a forest making professional. So he gave us this opportunity to go to Pune and conduct this afforestation activity. So it was a great opportunity and also a very thorough learning experience for us to establish ourselves as a forest maker. Because while I was at Toyota, I was working in parts procurement. And though I had a little bit idea of how a forest is planted, but not the details of it. And this project exposed me to development of the supply chain, how to buy the materials, what are the quality checks, how to hold the seedlings, how to transport the seedlings. And it wasn't a perfect project. We made, again, a lot of mistakes, but still the results were more or less, not if not the entire area. Some of the areas where we made less mistakes were very encouraging. And also I got exposed to the vision of the top management of at TKM. They came for the inauguration of RPC, and I could see that the top management at TKM was directly involved in the soil, in the ground. And though the purpose of this place was to become a regional parts center, but afforestation was also one of the core zones of this premises. So this kind of developed my vision of how we can move corporates in the direction of making afforestation or making a forest as one of the essential items in their premises or their factories. So this project kind of established our method. It gave us exposure and experience to execute a large project. However, it took us few years to get a project of that size. And the first project that I got was after 6 months after the TKM project. TKM we did the regional parts center we did in March 2011, and then later 3 months in August 2011 we did this project in somebody's backyard. So I had some experience of planting a forest in my backyard, some experience of planting forest in Pune at RPC, and then this was the third forest that we planted in backyard of somebody's house. And then we did a few more projects. So it was slowly growing. Slowly every now and then we would get 1 or 2 projects, somehow make our ends meet and kind of establish ourselves as forest makers. In 2012, I got an opportunity to speak at something called Inc. conference. And this was the first time when I could share the work of Dr. Miyawaki at a large stage. This talk went online on YouTube. Many people saw it, appreciated it. And for the first time, people outside uh, Toyota premises, I would say, TKM premises, people in general public also got to know about this methodology. And this was so encouraging for me, for myself as well, and also for some other people, because this gave a ray of hope that a barren patch of land or a lawn can be converted into a forest in such a small period of time. So as much as I was moved looking at Dr. Miyawaki's work, a lot of people were equally moved. Next year, I got an opportunity to speak at TED. I became a TED fellow and spoke at TED in Vancouver in Canada. Uh, Shared our vision of making forest everywhere. There was a lot of Toyota reference also in this talk, and what impressed them a lot was that how some of the principles of manufacturing, like Hyjunka, was also applied, can also be applied in standardizing the forest making process. So this was very new for them, that it's not that only environmentalists or botanists should be making these forests, anyone can do it. And I think everybody working at TKM, being exposed to these forests for so long, can easily do it, because when I started with making a lot of mistakes, but eventually the same project, which was full of mistakes, took us to so many different places. 2 years later, we got to do our first project outside India in the US. And in the same year, we got a executive director in the company. This was in 2015, so already 5 years. Aforest was already 5 years old. So we got Sunny, who is executive director at Aforest now, and he takes care of execution of all the projects, especially all the large projects. And this gave me an opportunity to focus more on the philosophy, on the standardization of the methodology, and how to move a forest in new directions and new geographies. Same year, we got an opportunity to make a forest in the Netherlands. This is that one of most successful projects. Because of this project, our clients, they won an award of 1.8 million euros, and using that money, they planted forests all over the Netherlands. So today, they have planted around 150 forests in the country. And just a few days ago, they published a book. This book was published, which is the story of planting of this entire movement of tiny forest in Netherlands and other parts of Europe. So hope you can see my screen, my camera. So this is the map of the country of Netherlands, and today you won't be more than 20 kilometers away from a tiny forest planted using this methodology. So another advantage of being open source was that every time we would make a forest, we would share the methodology and the clients would be able to replicate it. Then we did project in Singapore Zoo. I got an opportunity to speak again at TED, and this time we spoke about how to make a forest. We also got an opportunity to work with Dr. Miyawaki's team in May 2016 on a project called Moreno Project, where they are making a forest along the Pacific coast, which was hit by tsunami back in 2011. So you can, maybe Srini-san will be able to recognize Dr. Fujiwara here in the hat and green shirt. So I happened to learn from Dr. Fujiwara, also happened to find new trainers in Japan, Nishino-san, and learning from them and applying that methodology back again in India, we were able to create forests in some of the most arid places. So this is an example of 1-year-old forest in Rajasthan. This is an example of a 2-year-old forest in Iran. And as I was explaining, this is how the forest at Bangalore airport looked like. You can see it doesn't look like a mound at TKM because we are not adding that extra soil. We also got an opportunity to work in Pakistan, so we went to Lahore and made a forest there. So I'm very lucky that way. I was exposed to some of the most difficult geography, some of the most exotic locations, some of the places where otherwise Indians won't get an opportunity to travel to. So because of forest, because of what I learned at TKM has taken me many different places. And also I happened to meet Shah Rukh Khan 3 years ago. So TED Hindi Nai Soch happened, and that time I, I also gave a talk in the first episode of TED Hindi. In 2017, in the same year, we started a project in Rajasthan called Maru One, which in Hindi means Forest of the Desert. And in this project, we are focusing on developing, reviving ecosystem of a desert. So this will be desert specific uh, place where we are not only making forest but also training people how to make forest. This is a group of 17 people from the Netherlands who came to Maruwan, and we trained them how to make a forest. So because of such trainings, we could get so many forests planted in the country. Similarly, we started working with religious faith-based organizations. This is an organization called EcoSikh. So we are planting forests in gurudwaras and religious in grounds owned by gurudwaras in Punjab. And the target is to plant around 1 million trees all over Punjab in form of tiny patches of forest of 550 trees each. So 550 to celebrate the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. We worked with police, made some forest on police grounds and police stations. This is a forest in the office of Karnataka State Reserve Police 1st Battalion. This is a project in Anandvan. This is a large forest. In this forest now the pug marks of a leopard are also being seen. So this is a great example. Now we are also working in Beirut. We did a project with the people of the city. We trained them how to make this forest, and on the municipal land close to the river of Beirut, we are making these forests. This project also won an award in New York recently. And 2 years ago, our trainers from Japan, Nishino-san, he visited us, and we had shown him some of our grown forest. So the methodology is evolving, and what we also learned was that Miyawaki method is also very new method. So Nishino-san is the last student of Dr. Akira Miyawaki. He was recently awarded his PhD just 2 months ago, and his work is on the grasses and the herbs. So one of the drawbacks of Miyawaki method till date was that it only focuses on the climax forest species. But now with a few added layers, and as the methodology evolved, we'll be planting fringe and mantle grasses and shrubs, grasses and herbs also along with these forests. So the results have been extremely encouraging. We are able to see temperature differences up to 14 degrees Celsius in months of summer. And in one of our projects in Maharashtra, even pug mark of a tiger was seen. So I think this has been quite a journey for us so far. All thanks to TKM, where I learned the methodology. And I made this slide 2 years ago, but this shows how it got started. And it took us 2 to 3 years to finally reach that scale that we wanted to. But today we have been able to plant forest in India, abroad, and especially in urban places. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Subhendu-san, thank you very much for your most inspirational speech and talk. And really, you are a live example, the passion, how it can carry any person to the greatest height if you follow your really passion. Means anything what we do, if we are really passionate, what great achievements we can make. You have given a live example to all of us.
Thank you so
We are
much.
very happy that you are from TKM. You followed your passion and you are at this stage. Thank you very much for that. So there are some questions which are published. First, let me give you some comments. Goel San, your boss has given a comment. So he remember you going along with means Goel San was part of going to the national park and other areas because he was the most strongest person in Japanese.
Uh-huh.
So, he was the bridge between Miyawaki-san and our team.
Okay.
He remembers all those moments and he's very proud of you and he wishes you good luck.
I would like to thank Goyal San for selecting me. So he was in my panel interview when I for my job at TK.
Okay. Sorry, unfortunately, Goel-san has joined as attendee and he cannot comment.
Okay, no worries.
You
Yeah.
can connect with him. And also, Goel-san has asked a question. Did you get an opportunity to meet Miyawaki-san again and what was his reaction?
So we happened to meet Dr. Fujiwara when we went to Japan because Dr. Miyawaki that time went through a brain surgery. He had a clot in the brain, and though he was operated, the doctor did not remove the clot because they were worried that if it is removed, maybe they can do more harm than good. So we unfortunately could not meet him. We met Dr. Fujiwara, and she was happy with our work and also was quite a good critique of the work. She said, if you are not doing a survey of native forest of that region before you plant your first forest in that region, then don't call it a Miyawaki forest, because Miyawaki forest can only be planted after conducting a survey of potential natural vegetation. And she told us our shortcoming. She said, you need a botanist in your team. You need somebody who can recognize the species when you go to the jungle to do these surveys. So we did exactly what she suggested. We found a botanist, expanded our team, and changed our focus from earthwork, which we used to think is the main activity of making a forest using Miyawaki method, and shifted the focus to the forest survey, seed collection, and germination of seedlings. So luckily at the same time, we also happened to meet Nishino-san, who owns, his father owns one of the biggest nurseries in Japan. They are the biggest suppliers to all the forests planted using Miyawaki method in Japan. So we could learn from him how to prepare the pot mix and how to properly germinate the seedlings. We are still in that process of learning. And that's when we realized that the actual change, large scale change will happen if we focus on conservation of mother trees, seed collection, and nursery development of these native tree species. So now the focus has been shifted to become a supplier to afforestation projects which are being planted using the Miyawaki method, rather than just being the company that practices the method. Because unless we have the supply chain, we will not be able to reach the perfect Miyawaki method. So Dr. Fujiwara's feedback was the same when she visited our forest in Netherlands also, and she gave the same feedback. She said, don't plant, you have planted some of the species which are not climax forest species. They might grow fast and make you look successful, but in long run, all these species are going to die. Only the climax forest shade tolerant species will survive. So change your list of species. That was her feedback, and we learned that, and now our quality of forest has improved after meeting them.
Yeah. Subhendu-san, sorry, there are furthermore questions and appreciations I'll go through quickly. One,
Sure.
Dharmanandan-san has asked, as population increases, we need more of a cash crops, which is inevitable. So how
Yes.
can forest and farming coexist?
I asked this question to people like Subhash Palekarji, who is an expert in natural farming, and what he says is we have to change our lifestyle. He said if everybody wants to eat rice, it might so happen that we might have to get rid of all the forest to convert all these lands into agricultural fields because yields are limited. Or if everybody wants to eat wheat. So he says we have to go local and shift our diet patterns, shift our staple meals that we are having every day. So in a place like Karnataka, where ragi has maybe 2.5 months growth cycle or 3 months growth cycle, the crops, if we are consuming something which has a 5 months, 4 month cycle, probably we will be putting more burden on that land. And as the population increases, this burden is only going to increase. So we have to go back to the native crops, which can do a lot, which are more efficient in yield without consuming more water or with less maintenance. And then he suggests a lot of things like intercropping and agroforestry, where the forest and agriculture happens at the same patch of land together. So these are the kind of solutions. The right now, the industrial agriculture that is being practiced is only creating large monocultures which are totally dependent on machinery and chemicals. That is not going to take us very far. So that has been my understanding.
Yeah, thank you, Subhendu-san. There are many questions. I'll pick only some because of the time constraint. There is one question. 10-year-old Miyawaki forest is not able to get a kg of harvest in mango, whereas the mango planted independently gives more than 500 fruits at its 10 years age. So what
Yes.
is your thought on this process?
The per acre yield will be a lot more in Miyawaki forest. The per tree yield will never be able to match, because a forest has to have all sizes of trees. When we go to a forest, we see an infant, it's like a family. So we have to see some seeds, we have to see some seedlings, we have to see infant trees, like small seedlings, maybe 1 or 2 feet in height, and then some adolescent trees, and then some really large trees with a lot of fruits on them. But those trees are rare. When we make an orchard, all the trees will get enough land and enough maintenance, enough space to grow to their fullest. And that's the reason why their yield is obviously much more high. But in Miyawaki method, per acre, you will be able to plant 12,000 seedlings. Whereas in a mango garden, mango orchard, per acre, we might be having just 200, 300 trees. So the per acre yield in mixed pattern of all the species, the output of that 1 acre Miyawaki forest would be a lot more than a mango orchard. And this mango orchard might support just humans as one single species who can consume fruits from this 1 acre. But a 1 acre Miyawaki forest will have everything. It's there for all the other 8.4 million species than humans. So I think we should not compare the yields, we should compare the total output. What is benefiting the environment and the people and their well-being a lot more. And then probably our answer would be it's better to plant a Miyawaki forest if we want to improve the quality of water, air, and yes, we can obviously harvest some of the fruits, but not for commercial purpose from a Miyawaki forest.
I thank you, Subhendu-san. Can we go a little more quicker? What would be approximate cost for urban forest per square meter? There is one question.
The minimum I have seen is around 300 rupees per square meter. Sometimes we might have to spend up to maybe even 2,600. This varies a lot because all the materials that we are using are natural materials. If we can get them for free, if we can plant our own nurseries, the cost of project is going to be dramatically less. But if we are doing at a corporate premises where everything has to be procured, then obviously the cost sometimes goes really very high. So it depends project to project, but I think cost is not a constraint. We have seen some extremely poor small plot farmers also being able to plant a Miyawaki forest, all spending from their own pocket, because they would have arranged everything all by themselves, and most of the items for absolutely free.
Yeah. Subhendu-san, last question. There are many questions. I'm sorry, I'll post this to you maybe.
Sure, no
So
worries.
last question is, can we do a small forest on our rooftop?
Some people have done it. The problem with the forest on rooftop is that the slab has to be designed to bear the load of a forest after 10 or 20 years of growth. So you might be able to plant the forest, but you might not be able to anticipate what is going to be the weight of this forest after 20 years, because the slab load bearing capacity is not going to increase, but the load of this forest will keep on increasing as it grows. So it might not be as efficient as planting maybe some shrubs, and that's it.
Yes, last week I could see a video. A person, he has planted more than 1,000 plants on his rooftop on a 30-40 site. His
Yeah.
entire roof is a forest, but not with
Yes.
the forest plants, but with the shrubs, as you explained.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
for that. And now I have to pass on some of the appreciations which has come for you. See, what a good success story, and what an inspirational Saturday. So thank you very much. And
Pleasure.
fantastic, really amazing. Okay, then really appreciable. Great work, Subhendu-san. Incredible source of inspiration. And there are many more like that, but one that is very unique in the way of Toyota way. With that, I will conclude this Q&A session. Truly Hitozukuri. You are a great seed in creating human forest. So thank you very much. So these are all some of
Thank you so much.
things also. Thank you very much. Now, without spending much time, we have Paddy Son, who is VP in the sales and marketing, and he has also taken a plantation in his entire gated community. So he is also greening without leaving any opportunity wherever he finds. So I request Paddy Son to give the concluding remarks.
Yeah, thank you, Srini. Thank you, Subend. I think we are very proud of you today.
Thank you.
And the work you are doing is phenomenal. I think that's going to kind of change the way world looks at everything in a commercial manner to everything to a sustainability perspective. I think that's very good. Your work is commendable. Very proud that you're a product of Toyota. I think Toyota was your first company, and then you moved your own company. Then moved into your own company. That's great. To say, yeah, all of us are staying back with the Toyota. There are few people who left the Toyota. Most of the people who left the Toyota have grown, of course, made a lot of money. But I am really proud that you are contributing to the society. We are very proud, and yeah, contributing society is our Toyota's mission. And today, happy to see our contribution to the society is going a step further through the people who we invested on. So that's very good. Thank you, and thanks for excellent, very insightful presentation today. I think it should have triggered many thoughts in many minds. I think, as Srini mentioned, a lot of comments coming, and almost all of them positive. And yeah, maybe it also triggers in our mind. We have to start looking outside where it's a small place. Can I do some small foresting here, afforestation here? So that kind of triggering has happened today. I think you are the main reason. Thank you so much. Some of the pictures that you have shown, I think, like we have never seen Taj Mahal in that form. We're surrounded by forest. We have not seen airport, the barren surroundings. I think today it's quite a green. Thank you again, and a long way to go. And we wish you all the best. And my team, our team who participated today, I think, let's pick it up. Let's pick some of these things that Subhendu has told, and in our own way, how we can contribute to the society. I think that's very, very important. Thank you so much, Subhendu. All the best, and keep growing, keep making world green. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wanted to show this. This is something which I always carry with me.
Toyota Way 2001. Yeah. Good. Thank you. All the best.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Srini-san. Thank you, Badri-san. Thank you, Paddy-san. Thank you,
very much,
Sachin-san, Sapna-san, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you very much. So now today the conference's webinar is attended by nearly 500 people, the highest in the last series of webinar.
Wow.
So how many people want to be Miyawaki? How many people want to be Vanimurthy? And how many people want to be Shubhendu? So please decide your path today. So thank you very much for all your participation, and we could not answer your questions. We'll post this video on the YouTube and share the link with all of you so that you can see and then pick up whatever you want. And you can be in touch with Shubhendu for any questions through the organization of Forest. So you can be in touch with our team to get his contact details, so you can take advice anytime required. So with this, we would like to thank one of our ex-TKM employee who is a legend now with a good ovation. I request all of our administrative team to unmute and then give a ovation to Shubhendu-san.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Shubhendu-san. One request is before you move on to your dream place, maybe once you can visit our company. And also, as you know, Salkar-san and Ketkale-san are the inspiration of this forestation. And Ketkale-san is Deputy Managing Director now and driving all environment initiatives. And you can meet and have some good memorial moments before you go back.
Sure,
So,
sure, definitely.
Thank you very much. We look forward to meet you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We conclude here today.
Thank you. Bye-bye then. Bye.